Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I'd like to talk a bit about the G7 and how things are going, how they've been going since then. And there's just one thing I'd like to say before I start, and that is, if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know that I've never asked for any subscribers, but I understand from YouTube that if I get more subscribers, I'll get my videos will be seen by more people. And so if you wouldn't mind subscribing, if you approve of what I'm saying, I'd be most grateful. It would be very helpful. So thank you very much. So the G7, well, that was going to be Boris Johnson's opportunity to show global Britain on the world stage, wasn't it? And chance to show off how well we're going to do and how well we're doing since we broke free from the EU. Interesting that at this meeting the majority of those present were actually from the EU. Now, one of the things that was to be discussed at the G7 was climate change and controlling emissions and so on. So Johnson saw fit to arrive after a journey of 250 miles in his enormous presidential jet. That's the one we spent £900 decorating. It looked very nice, lovely Union Jack on it. He came out of the plane, stood at the top of the steps, and he waved to the crowds just like a bomber arriving in front of 100,000 people. Only, of course, Johnson was waving to the ground crew at St Ives Airport because there was nobody else there, because the public couldn't get anywhere near this conference. But it was a nice gesture, made a nice photo opportunity, I suppose, make him look very important. So then he got to the conference, and the first meeting was with Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden is obviously a very clever, very experienced politician, and he would never have got where he's got if he wasn't a brilliant judge of character. We know already that he doesn't approve of Johnson. He called him once, didn't he, another Trump. And he will know Johnson's reputation for being dishonest. And he will know how Johnson is threatening to breach the Northern Ireland Protocol unilaterally. So already Biden must have had serious doubts about Johnson. But they met and they had a meeting and they signed a completely meaningless Atlantic Charter or something or other. Biden said nothing after the meeting, but Johnson came out and said they were completely at one with it. In other words, he was trying to tell us that he'd managed to convince Biden that the EU were the root of all evil and that he was quite right in breaching the Northern Ireland Protocol. The photos of Johnson with his head bowed and with Biden with his hand on his shoulder told a completely different story. Clearly he got very short shrift from Biden. Then the others arrived, and you saw the EU group, Merkel and Macron and von der Leyen and Draghi and Charles, and all sat around the table having a good time, showing unity, solidarity. And you saw the pictures of Macron and Biden. One minute Macron had his hands all round, his arms all round Biden. Next minute Biden had his hands all round Macron. Next minute you saw Macron again with his hands all round Biden, hugging and all the rest of it. You thought they ought to get a room at one stage. But you could see the EU were making a definite effort to befriend Biden, and they were succeeding. And you saw as the week went on how closer they got. And you got the very clear message that Biden is much more interested in the EU than he is in the UK, with Johnson as Prime Minister. Then there were all the photo shoots, weren't there? There's all these foreign leaders looking very distinguished, well dressed, well turned out, very sophisticated. And right in the front, in the middle, Benny Hill, scruffy hair, ill-fitting scruffy suit. What impression does he think this gives? People look at him and they think, what a buffoon. His current wife was all over the place in very, very brightly coloured clothes, standing out like a sore thumb, as if to say, look at me, I want attention. Clearly a very self-assured young lady. They even brought the baby down, didn't they? What's a baby at a G7 conference for? And you could see from various shots that Johnson was out of it. It was all the EU and Biden. Then, of course, they went off to the Eden Project, didn't they, for dinner with the Queen. The Queen, incidentally, with her family, travelled by train. During the photo shoot, the Queen said, are we supposed to look as though we're enjoying this? Clearly a hint at Johnson that she didn't want to be there. I don't think the Queen likes Johnson very much. And so it went on. Not a great success. We showed off the our aircraft carrier, that parked up outside the venue for a while. This aircraft carrier, which incidentally cost £3 billion, without the planes, £3 billion. Now, to give you some idea of how much that is, how expensive that is, you could only buy 12 of those boats for the cost of the test and trace that Dido Harding is running. That's how expensive that boat is. And we had the Red Arrows, didn't we, and all the rest of it. And then Johnson had some bilateral meetings with some of the Europeans. And who should be present but Lord Gormless himself, David Frost. And for some reason which just is beyond belief, he thought when appearing at these meetings it would be appropriate to wear Union Jack socks. This is our chief negotiator. What is he thinking? He must have gone to one of those cheap souvenir shops in Oxford Street and thought, what can I get that's got a Union Jack on it? Oh, some socks. Yes, I'll wear some socks. Making a complete buffoon of himself. What does he think President Macron thinks when he looks in front of him and there's a guy in Union Jack socks trying to make a point? What point? And then the most excruciating moment of the whole thing was when Boris Johnson was addressing the gathering before they had their private meetings at the big oval table, and he's at the head of the table in front of all these distinguished, smart world leaders, and he talks to them as though he's talking to some elector in a Darlington by-election by talking about building back bigger and better, building back better, but in a more gender-friendly way, even in a feminine way. This is our Prime Minister telling world leaders in front of everybody, in front of the television cameras, that the aim of the whole meeting should be to build back better in a gender-friendly or more feminine way. You could almost sense the embarrassment of the people listening to this garbage. And so it was. And what came out of it? Well, global warming, we're just going to wait a bit, aren't we? Nothing much is going to happen on the COVID problem. We're going to give, what are we, billion doses we're going to give to the world. I did read somewhere the other day that to inoculate everyone in the world who's not been inoculated, the whole world, would cost 16 billion. That's half the price of our not very successful test and trace. And yet we're giving 1 billion doses. And so instead of giving this absolute priority, Africa and other parts, poorer parts of the world, are just going to be breeding breeding grounds for new strains of coronavirus. So it wasn't a great success, really. It was successful in as much as these people all got to meet Biden and they all got to know each other, which was nice. It was an embarrassment for the UK. Now, since then, we've had the announcement yesterday that the restrictions are going to be extended until the 19th of July, another month, which is, of course, going to be catastrophic for a lot of businesses. And we should remind ourselves that the reason for this is because at the beginning of April, India's neighbours, Bangladesh and Pakistan, were on the red list. But India, where the outbreak was much, much more serious, remained on amber. The reason being that Johnson wanted to go to India to beg for a trade deal. It didn't happen because the virus got so bad in the end the Indians asked him not to come. But in the meantime, in the 3 weeks between the 1st and the 22nd of April, hundreds and hundreds of planes came in from India carrying people, many of whom were almost certainly carrying the virus. And now it's a huge problem. Now we're heading up the table of world leaders again. We remain at number 6 on the total number of deaths for the whole of the coronavirus pandemic. And I think of yesterday we were the 6th highest number. We had the 6th highest number of new cases throughout the whole world. 8,000 new cases. And we spent 32 billion on testing and tracing. And we keep going on and on and on about we've led the world in vaccinating in front of everybody else. We've thrown the whole thing away because Boris Johnson wanted to get a deal with India. But it won't affect his poll ratings. He'll be more and more popular. That's just Boris, isn't it, as the people say. And then there's the Australian deal that's been announced today. Whoopee, at last we've got a free trade deal we didn't have before. My word, have they been desperate to get this deal. What it means is that Australians will now be able to sell their beef and their lamb in the UK. I think they're going to sell confectionery, and I think I read swimwear was the other product they were hoping to sell in this market. It means that a lot of our farmers will not be able to compete. They won't be able to compete with hormone-injected, antibiotic-injected beef coming from the other side of the world, coming from vast, vast farms. So a lot of farmers will go out of business. They'll have to sell up. Probably end up selling to Chinese corporations who'll move in as soon as they see bargains. And if the cost of getting it here ever goes up substantially, then the cost of meat will go up. We're relying on suppliers 12,000 miles away instead of local suppliers. But hey, it's a deal. It's a deal. We're on our way. Of course, the really good thing as far as Johnson is concerned with this deal is that having signed up this deal, it'll make it that much more difficult ever to rejoin the EU. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Just avoid anything to do with the EU. There appears to be a policy of actually making enemies of the EU. We are being so hostile at every opportunity of demonstrating hostility towards the EU. And you can't help wondering if the idea is that if they're seen as the enemy, people are more likely to rally around the government. This is how dictatorial governments always operate. Find a common enemy, somebody to victimize, somebody to blame. And that does seem to be what is happening with the EU. It's sinister, it's frightening, it's destructive, and it's extremely sad. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today. If you've watched this far, thank you very much, and until next time, bye-bye.